With the YouTube adpocalypse still looming over many channels, if you want to support this one, check out my Teespring store for the latest merch. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and this is a weird one to make. This is a weird video to make because I never thought I would see the day. I never thought I would see the day when the media was making the exact same mistakes it made with Ghostbusters in regards to Star Wars. And by that, I mean attacking the fan base. We saw this a couple years ago when Sony was getting ready to release the reboot of Ghostbusters. We saw this when the first trailer dropped and it was terrible because they made it look like it was kind of a sequel, right? Rather than a reboot of the franchise, and it only got worse from there. And so when people voiced their concerns over what was proven to be a dumpster fire of a film, the media hit back. It clapped back with, "Don't listen to sexist Ghostbuster fans, for they only are here for the nostalgia, and they don't want women's touching their proton packs," or some such nonsense. And this continued. It continued because there were some people out there that were being jerks. And those people were then the poster boys for anyone criticizing the film. We saw this when Melissa McCarthy came out and just said those people were those who lived in their mother's basements. Never mind the fact that that really angered a lot of fans, which ultimately I think really did hurt the box office. Then, of course, you had Paul Feig coming out and making jokes about it. Other people like Tom Rothman, who ran the studio, coming out and making jokes about it. And it ultimately led to the film massively underperforming, even though it got rave reviews from critics who were just like, I don't understand why people aren't going to see the movie. Because no one asked for it, for one. And two, and when it was announced, it was pretty vocal to say nobody wanted it. But it never really had anything to do at all, period, full stop, with women. And the same can be said about the new Star Wars films. People who don't like them, a lot of them aren't necessarily caring about Rey being in the lead or Jyn Erso, right? And now we're seeing this, well, you know, Kathleen Kennedy, she's led 4 films. 3 of them been female-led at over $1 billion. But the one male-led movie is going to do less than Justice League. Yeah, it's Scott Mendelson over on Forbes, who seriously cannot get Lucasfilm's dick out of his mouth. It is just insane how much he's just taking it all in, right? Just taking it all down. And this is not just happening with him. We're seeing this from across the board in a number of people. A number of publications have been taking this approach, and it all has to do with the Kelly Marie Tran situation. And that in and of itself is interesting too, because what we're seeing here is we're seeing this what those of us in Gamergate coined as the "Gamers Are Dead" articles, which was a coordinated effort on one day to have, I think it was 12 different articles from 12 different publications, all essentially saying that the gamer was over, and that the gamer was no longer your audience. And it was a very pivotal moment in regards to Gamergate and its early days and how it was approaching the pushback from the media that never once wanted to look into their own accountability. And here it's not the same thing at all, but we're seeing a very similar pushback from them, like we saw with Ghostbusters and like we've seen with other things in the past, where people who are vocally upset at what they've seen, vocally not liking what they've watched, aren't allowed to talk about it because 1 or 2 people out there have said some bad things, and as a result of that, nobody wants to pay attention, and they use it as a scapegoat. Now, I just want to be 100% objective here and to say that this sort of response happens with everybody. I criticize modern feminism, and I will say feminists when usually I'm referring to 1 or 2, and it becomes a very hard thing on the internet to try to describe a person who's kind of an anonymous shitbag with the things that they say, and not essentially just kind of assign it to their label. That is something that I think all of us need to work on. But what we're seeing in this particular regard is that these particular people that have been jerks online in regards to Star Wars, that were sending terrible things to Rian Johnson and terrible things to other people involved, They are a very, very, very small minority, but unfortunately they've taken up the entirety of the conversation. The down with Disney and whatever the hell that thing is, it's been stipulated by some people out there that it is just nothing more than a pro social justice warrior group that is looking to undermine conservative voices who disliked the movie. It's an interesting take on that one, but I don't know how much faith I put into that. I think it's probably just third-party trolls. But it's interesting when the narrative is crafted in a way that kind of makes you think that. And so I don't know yet. The jury's still out on that one. I can't say one way or the other. It's possible. But based on my experience from Gamergate, based on my experience dealing with these sort of things before, I think a lot of it actually does boil down to simply just third-party trolls. And that's what we've kind of seen here in regards to the pushback against The Last Jedi, which then turned into the pushback against Solo. And the sad thing is that Solo was taking a hit when it ultimately did nothing wrong. The faults lie with the leadership at Lucasfilm, obviously Kathleen Kennedy being the top brass, and having the buck stop with her, but she's also been extremely silent on the situation, whereas Mark Hamill said a couple things, but nothing too much to really kind of get the ire of certain fans. He's more poked fun at it, whereas Rian Johnson feels like he has been outright aggressive towards certain people who are critical against his work, even going as far as to, people finding old video footage of him saying, "I want people to hate my movies," which makes sense because the guy's made 4 films and one of them was good, and that would be Brick, Looper, and Last Jedi. Stunk. I haven't seen Brothers Bloom. But what I'm trying to say here, ultimately, is that the media is doing everything it can to protect Kennedy, to protect the people at Lucasfilm from rightful criticism. And this is coming from a person who is a huge Star Wars fan. Anyone who follows my channel, who knows me in real life, knows I'm a diehard fan. And I will be until the day that I die. There's probably nothing they're going to be able to do ultimately that will ever make me not a fan. But there are things they can do that will make me stop going and seeing the movies on opening weekend, because I know how much the box office numbers mean. There are certain things that can be done. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. The problem with it is when the media gets involved the way that they are. And again, the media is not everybody, but it's a very vocal group of those with a very large platform that are using this as a way to gain culture points, as we've seen. They are the ones that are going to damage the fan base. And this is where Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy and even Rian Johnson and everyone else needs to realize where we are. What I've been seeing a lot of is the comments, well, Lucasfilm hates the fans. Well, that's not necessarily proven, right? Rian Johnson has made a couple comments. A few other people have made a couple comments, but nothing from the top brass, right? Nothing from, Kathleen Kennedy probably does hate us. Don't get me wrong. She probably absolutely hates all of us, because we know they watch all this stuff, right? I'm just saying, I'm sure they do, but vocally, publicly, they haven't said anything yet. And as a result of that, we have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. But what it is this push from the media to utterly defend the situation, to attack fans, to attack people who might disagree with it, even though there's been many vocal fans that have been like, no, these are just trolls, that's the thing. And then you see people saying, oh, no, Star Wars fans no longer have to be your audience, right? I've seen some stuff that kind of really kind of hints at that. It's leading towards that. The truth of the matter is this: Star Wars fans absolutely have to be the audience of Lucasfilm. 100%. It's not growing in China. The Chinese audience didn't grow up with it, so there's no nostalgia factor there, and they're not building new nostalgia. So as a result of that, the audience is dwindling. There's a lot that's coming out during the summer months. Star Wars is an event. It needs to feel like it's an event. Putting it up against Deadpool 2, is one of those things that, I think ultimately hurt it. Never mind, there was a vocal group of people out there. Maybe not we're calling for a boycott of Solo, but we're very much apprehensive to go see it. And never mind the middling reviews. Never mind the fact that the people who gave the movie kind of an iffy review score are the same ones that gave The Last Jedi a positive review, right? They're the ones that gave Ghostbusters a positive review. So you really can't take review scores 100% to heart. But there are so many people out there that just look for a simple thumbs up, thumbs down, and that's it. That's all they have time to process. They don't have the bandwidth for anything else. And I think ultimately the media knows that. And so they can kind of control certain things with how they act. And I don't feel that they're any different in that regard. I do feel like I don't think there's a club of people that sit there and dictate certain things, but I think people follow the lead from others. I do. I think they follow the lead. If one person says this, it becomes a game of telephone essentially, or follow the leader or lemmings, however you want to play it. But what we're seeing now, and we're kind of seeing that now in regards to this particular thing. Star Wars fandom isn't toxic. Star Wars fandom are full of fans that are passionate about the product that they love, about the stories that they love, the escapism that they love, and they want to see it handled with care. They want to see it treated with the type of respect that it had in the beginning. Whereas Lucas originally used those movies to kind of touch on cultural issues at the time, these new movies aren't. They're not. The sci-fi isn't rooted in politics, even if essentially they try to be. You know, Lucas, for love him or hate him, he tried some new stuff with the prequels in terms of politics that were very much indicative of the times. And I think that worked out again in retrospect. It's not something we picked up on then, but it's something that he wanted to do. He wanted to try something different. And that's why I think ultimately we can kind of respect the prequel trilogy a lot more. But these new movies, they're not saying anything different. They're not trying anything different. Force Awakens, as much as I loved it, was nostalgia. The Last Jedi, as much as I tried to like it, and I've tried multiple times to like it boils down to Rian Johnson attempting to kill something for the sake of just trying to piss people off. Because I think that's what it boiled down to. If he did in fact say that when Mark Hamill questioned some of the directions in the film, some of the story directions, and he said, I don't think the fans are going to like this. And he says, again, reportedly, that it doesn't matter what the fans want. It's all about the story. But his story was unfinished. It was convoluted. It was trite, and it was lacking. And as a result, we find ourselves in the state of disarray. But the state of disarray is, and I'll be honest here, it's profitable to certain people. Either pro or against is profitable. Now, I've talked a lot about Star Wars. The videos do well. There's profit. I talk about Star Wars because I love the franchise. I love it. I want to see it continue. And if I have a voice to argue back, I'm going to use it. But there are people out there on the other side that are using it to push their own agenda. Those who don't want to ever listen to anyone who's not them and their friends. People who don't want to sit there and ever listen to someone who might be a conservative. Now, I myself am not a conservative, but there are plenty of conservative Star Wars fans that maybe don't like some of the direction. What they feel is tokenism. What they feel is pandering. What they feel is SJW wars sort of thing. Those people have valid concerns and criticisms, and they've been 100% disregarded. Same thing happened with Ghostbusters, and we saw what happened with that. They're scrambling to try to rebuild the trust with the brand. Ivan Reitman is very much working on trying to rebuild the trust with Ghostbusters. So much so that he took the third video game and made it non-canon, probably because they're working on an actual third film with the actors. That's the whole point. Is this sort of thing can have long-lasting repercussions. Gamergate was just the start of something. Fan revolt. It had an impact on the gaming. It had an impact on Gawker. Gawker is no more, and part of that had to do with Gamergate. Part of that had to do with consumer revolt of fans that were upset with how things were going and didn't want to be mistreated or talked down to. And that's what we're seeing here with people like Scott Mendelson from Forbes and Dom Nero from Esquire. And the people who write these, Star Wars fans no longer have to be your audience articles. The ones that are ultimately just going to lead more people to not go to the theater. And the reason why is because they're going to take that and they're going to think that that is being done on behalf of the company, which it isn't, by the way. But that's how they express their frustration. And it's weird, but it works. So if Disney and Bob Iger and Alan Horn and Kathleen Kennedy and everyone else at Lucasfilm wants to make sure that they right the wrongs here. Actually, I think this really goes to J.J. Abrams. They need to start issuing statements where they don't adhere to what the media says on a public level. that they don't listen to what that's their opinion. That's their opinion. And that they're committed, that Lucasfilm's committed to making the best possible product, and that they're making it for the fans. And they need to put a lot of emphasis on Star Wars Celebration next year, which I will be hopefully attending, as a way to showcase to the fans that they're the ones who matter, not the people who sit behind their keyboards and talk trash one way or the other. And the problem with it is as the fans start seeing themselves attacked and misrepresented, the more resentment they have, and the more resentment grows towards the parent company. And so that could negatively impact them in the long run. And again, this entire little rant's been all over the place, and I admit that, and I appreciate you getting to this point. But I've seen this sort of thing go down before multiple times. I've been in the middle of it multiple times, and I'm telling you that this is not going to be good, right? These articles that are attacking the fandom is only going to negatively impact the fandom more than the people who might be dicks. And until Lucasfilm comes out and says something about it, it's only going to look negative against them. Because the last thing you want to do is fuck with the people who pay you, right? The last thing you want to do is screw that audience over. Then audience, as we've learned from dwindling box office numbers, isn't growing. That they're not coming in droves. The merchandise sales are down. So if something is rotten at Disney, something is rotten as Lucas, the question is, who's the person who's causing the poison? And that person then needs to be removed. I don't know if it's Kathleen Kennedy, but I have no one else at this point to look at to make that claim. And so if it's not her, if she's dedicated to it, she needs to come out and issue statements reassuring the fans that everything is fine. And until we see that, which I don't think we will, it's only going to cause a further divide. So anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest. What do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been $3 Theater. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.